Triplet talk, triplet talk, triplet talk, triplet talk. That should have been our intro song.
Yeah, we messed up.
Just goes triplet talk, triplet talk. Why? Because this is Triplet Talk, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, it is. So welcome back.
Welcome back.
To our 5 listeners. Getting 10.
All of our 5 listeners.
Yes.
Now they're all day. It's been stuck in their head. Triplet talk, triplet talk, triplet talk, triplet talk.
I hope that didn't put you to sleep.
See, I was about to say that.
Oh, man.
I hope it doesn't put you to sleep.
Okay. Well,
We got to get them energized because we're going to be talking about sleep.
Sleep's the best.
Sleep is the best.
Does anyone out there get sleep? How does it feel? I don't remember it anymore. What is actual sleep?
Humans can sleep? I feel like the vampires in Twilight, that's a weird callback. They never got sleep, remember? And everyone would just sit there and stare.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't got sleep. And then you're like, oh, he's so romantic. He stares at you in your room without your permission.
Sounds like babies.
Doesn't sleep. Sounds like babies. If babies could walk and teleport and glow in the sun, glittery, I don't know. They'd probably do that too.
Yeah.
So let's just start talking about it.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. This episode, we're talking about sleep. So I feel like we talk about it a lot, kind of interwoven with everything else that we talk about. So baby sleep is a crazy game that I feel like is always changing. And right when you feel comfortable with what you're doing and what's happening, and I feel like right when they feel comfortable, they switch. And man, I feel like I'm always I'm Googling everything about, because you're trying to figure out, okay, they're X months old and like how much should they be sleeping or how long should they be napping? I feel like it's just like a crazy game. But the big thing I'd like to point out with triplet sleep, so clearly anybody that's understands basic math knows that triplet is 3, so 3 babies. And we are currently living at my parents' house, so the babies are all in one room. So 3 babies plus 1 bedroom equals no privacy for the babies. So if one baby decides to start screaming, the rest of them will probably start crying, and it will be a huge chain reaction of very angry babies. So that was something we really struggled with in the beginning. I think when the babies were really young, especially when they were in bassinets in our room, just when they would start crying, because you'd have to, really jump on that really quickly before they would all just start crying. And the other thing too is it gets kind of nerve-wracking, I guess to say the least. So if, one baby starts crying, obviously your instinct reaction is to get up and, try to calm them down and hope that the other 2 don't, because, it's just you and your husband in the room. And if you're only 2 people, I think that part, obviously, it sounds like such an obvious problem, but it's definitely a reoccurring issue that we've been having, is there's always this like juggle of how to handle the 3 kids. And I think sleep has definitely been one of those things that I told Vince, I'm like, we need to talk about it, just because a triplet sleep is so different, I think, than, just sleep training or just dealing with an individual baby sleeping. And I was like, we really got to share this, because it's just like wild. I feel like everything we've gone through is crazy. But yeah, let's see. Newborn sleep is obviously, they're sleeping a lot. And we've talked about that with the newborn episode when the babies came home. And then, the babies get a little older, maybe 3-4 months, and they start the 4-month sleep regression, which is kind of nuts. And I remember my sister-in-law actually warned me about it. You don't really know what it is. It's kind of like when people are like, oh yeah, watch out for getting old, it's bad. And you're like, whatever. No, sleep regression is real. So basically, the baby, it's actually a good thing when you look at it overall. So the baby is learning how to sleep for longer stretches. But to do that, they're waking up all the time because they're trying to figure out what's going on. So for you kind of feel like we had this great plan, like we're doing all these, X amount of naps a day, this and that, and then now it's like, wait, now you're waking up? Now I'm confused. So, and that, once again, difficult with 3. When they were really small, I'm trying to think back. When they were really, really small, they would nap in those swings a lot, which I think we touched on in our last episode with our favorite items that we, favorite baby items that we have. But they weren't really in their nursery to nap until they were about, I want to say 5 months old. They were getting a little too big for the swings. And honestly, it kind of scared me to put them in to like nap for some reason. I think it is because there's literally 3 in the room. Duh. But, I worried because with the other 2, if one started crying, I didn't want it to disturb the other 2 when they're in a deep sleep or anything, and I felt really bad about it. So that kind of scared me. But luckily, when the babies were sleeping at night and we moved them into their cribs, they actually weren't, waking up and crying as much. They still were. I'm not going to say they weren't. There definitely were a lot of nights where, Vince and I were kind of staring at the monitor, waiting for somebody to wake up, and kind of running in there and like shushing them back to sleep, which probably wasn't like the greatest thing to do. I know you're supposed to let your baby cry it out, but back then they were so small and it was so consistent that there's no way. And with our living situation, we couldn't have separated them at that time. With all the cribs, their cribs were all in one room and we kind of only had one room for them to be in. So we were kind of shushing them and putting them back to sleep with binkies. They're not with binkies anymore, thank goodness. But that was when sleep was really hard, constantly having to go in there when they would wake up crying because they couldn't really soothe themselves to sleep yet. This was probably 5 or 6 months. I had them in their cribs to sleep at around 5 months old, for nighttime. So they were out of our room and in their nursery. I felt like it was time. I know certain people or certain doctors kind of recommend a longer time. I talked with my doctor and she was cool with it. I was cool with it. Yeah, it was hard. I think, with them being in their own space, me, knowing that I can't be there quicker, than 2 seconds, it would take a couple minutes to get there. But for us, for Vince and I as a couple, it was a huge relaxation. We were able to recharge as parents, as people, because when you have the babies laying there, you're with them all day. They're in your room sleeping. You really can't unwind and relax and just you know what I mean? You're kind of always in this state of a fire alarm's about to go off, but you don't know when. But good night. So yeah, I think them going in their cribs, it was a success. It was hard. I remember acting like I was really confident about it, yeah, they need to do it, And when they were there, I was kind of like, oh man, for a couple minutes. But then once it happened, I felt really good about it. So back to what I was saying with we were kind of calming them and soothing them when they would wake up. That was in this span. So when we had just moved them into the nursery, they would occasionally wake up and we would soothe them. And thank goodness for white noise machines. Once again, I'm going to speak highly of those because that was a huge aid in our sleep journey. I'm trying to think when we really started pushing the white noise. I think it was right when they came home. I honestly don't remember a time when we weren't using it. So, yeah, I don't even know. I don't even think they could sleep without it right now. Yeah, so we were doing that. And then, it got to the point where I wanted to have them nap all in the same room once I moved them into the nursery. and they were sleeping there at nighttime. They were still napping in their swings. And I said, you know what? I think it's time that they all nap in their cribs. And they were still in this phase where they were kind of like fussy and they weren't like really sleeping all the same. And then it's 3 babies, so they're not perfectly synced. And so having them all nap in one room is just like chaos. And it goes back to when we moved them out of our room into their own room. Nap time is a recharge time for you and for your babies. And the amount you can get done in a nap time is more than you've done in your whole lifetime. I think every time it's nap time, I'm like, go. It's a race from, the very start of it to the very end of it. It's just like, get stuff done. So to have this constant worry of one waking up and waking all the others up, it was just not working for me. And I made the decision to use our bassinets that we had in our room that we weren't using anymore, and kind of sporadically put them in places in the house that were other rooms that we weren't utilizing during the day that we could get dark and have sound machines in. So that way each baby could have their own room to nap in. So our son Vincent was in the nursery just because he's bigger and he really doesn't fit in the bassinet anymore. So he kind of had to be in the nursery, while the girls were in separate rooms around the house, different rooms that we could shut doors and they could have their own space. And I felt a lot better about this. And I think that really helped with their sleeping as well, because once they were napping like that in a strong way, the sleeping changed too. I noticed they started developing better habits of sleep. And that was kind of a game changer to that. And then just recently, I'm going to say a week ago. So prior to this, we have been rocking all the babies, down for a nap, down to bed each time. So that's 2 naps a day plus bedtime. So you can do the math at how many babies I was putting to sleep a day. So by the time nighttime hit, I was so exhausted of rocking these kids to sleep, and it was like such a battle to actually put them to sleep. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is my life now. This is nuts. And I realized that I should really utilize the cry it out method. But I was like, how are we supposed to do this? Because we have all the babies in the same room. And I decided, well, okay, I just talked about what I do with naps. Why can't we do that for bedtime? So basically get them fed, ready for bed. And instead of putting them in their nurseries where they're all together, separate them to cry it out. And then once they're all asleep, we can bring them together in their nursery and have all the doors shut. So they'll have their own, quiet space. And we've been doing that now for 2 weeks. And that is the best. That is life-changing. It is so hard to do at first because they have no idea what's going on and you have no idea what, if it's going to work. And then once they figure out that they can put themselves to sleep, it is crazy awesome. I mean, I was reading a bunch of stuff online and I came across this article that said, just so many benefits of the cry it out method just for developing this independence with your kids. And our son, Vincent, was actually waking up super early in the morning and it was driving us crazy. Like, why does he do this? He gets not that long of naps during the day. I don't get what he's active. I don't know what's going on. And they basically said, if your baby is able to put themselves to sleep on their own, it's this sense of if they wake up in the middle of the night, they can kind of put themselves back. So basically when you rock your baby to bed, you're doing the motion of putting them to sleep. So they're used to you holding them, being kind of on their shoulder in this rocking motion. So then they're waking up in the middle of the night in a completely different spot, all alone, and they're panicking. I mean, they're like, well, wouldn't you panic if you took a nap and you woke up in a different state? Like, honestly, yeah, So it kind of made sense. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, duh. And I had always been, a supporter of the cry it out method. I've never been against it. I was just worried to do it because I had 3 kids and I didn't know how the heck that would work. But we did it. It's awesome. It is like completely changing my life right now. And I just, going back to just like an overview of everything that I've talked about, the kids' sleep is just always changing. And it kind of makes sense because they're growing so much within this first year. I always forget, because you're with them every day. You don't really notice how much they've grown and changed, but it totally makes sense. Their sleep patterns change and they change. So I think it's really easy to get frustrated with it. I know I have. So if you're listening and you're kind of dealing with, like crazy baby sleep, I think every mom can attest, and they've been there, and we feel you. We're tired for you. We get it. And, if something's not working, I would just say, try something else. I think that's the biggest thing. And it's kind of hard, it's hard to, stick to something for a little bit to see if it works when it's not working. But, they take time, babies aren't robots. They're little humans. They got to figure it all out. They got to learn. And, it's also challenging with 3 is because they're all separate. So luckily our 3 kind of have been able to, kind of work together on these little transitions. So that, thank goodness, going from, the 3 naps to the 2 nap, it basically happened they did it all at once, thank goodness. So we're lucky there. But I think I really wanted to talk about this just because I think it's important to understand with triplets or multiples that, a lot of moms like to talk about how they sleep trained their kids or their sleeping habits and things. But it's important to remember that with 3, there's more than 1 and things have to be handled differently. And, anything that you can figure out is a huge win for yourself. And I'm still so excited about the whole cry it out. I'm so happy that they can finally put themselves to sleep. It feels like a huge win. And I feel like it's only going to get better from here. So it's really tough in the beginning when they're first home because they're really not, they're up all the time, and then they slowly learn. And I'm not even really to the full, awesomeness of them sleeping the 12 hours. They're like 11 and a half right now, but I see the light and we're almost there. So yeah, that's my take on triplet sleep.
So when Lauren and I first got married, 2 months later, we got a dog named Vincent, and he's a golden retriever, and we got him as a puppy. Now, when I was a kid, I think I ended up counting after all the dogs that we've had. I've had about 10 dogs before I even left my parents' house and went away to college at age 18. So had a lot of experience with dogs. Didn't realize that my mother did 99% of the work, because when we had Benson as a puppy, one thing that's tough is you have to crate train them. And so you keep them in the kennel at night, they bark and whimper, and then eventually they realize that the crate is a comfort area. It's not, because they feel alone or however they feel. And eventually they get comfortable with it, and it helps them with potty training, and it keeps them out of trouble. You don't want them running around at night chewing on and eating things that they're not supposed to be eating while you're asleep. So why do I bring this up? Well, because for a while when Benson was a puppy, consistently, Lauren and I were getting up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 2 a.m. to clean up his kennel because he pretty much had explosive diarrhea all in this kennel. And we'd have to get up from our deep sleep to clean this kennel, clean him up. And we were just exhausted. And I thought, man, I can't do this. Like, this is just awful. You may have heard me in previous episodes say that, I'm a staunch 7 to 8 hour sleep, no exceptions. Anything less and I start to panic, right? So I wasn't getting my full 7, 8 hours. Then I got to the point where I just accepted it. I just said, you know what? I'm going to accept this. This is just what happens when you take care of a dog. Don't need to be upset. Don't need to freak out. You end up going back to sleep. It's fine. And I thought that that would kind of dive into with kids. Turns out way wrong. Way wrong. Way wrong. Total different thing. Because they sleep when you don't really need them to sleep, and they don't sleep when you want them to sleep. And that's the struggle. That's the struggle, is getting them to sleep when they're supposed to sleep, getting them to stay asleep, and specifically getting all three of them to sleep. So not sure if Lauren talked about this or not, but I'm going to talk about it. The kids all are currently in the same room, in the same nursery. They're all in individual cribs, but they're all in the nursery. And when they were in the bassinets in our room, when they were first born and coming home, they were all in bassinets in our rooms. So with that in mind, if one baby is just not sleeping, screaming and crying, your immediate reaction is to just go and grab the kid and get them out of there before the other two are wakened up, because then otherwise you can have a situation where all three are screaming and you're trying to figure out how to put all three to sleep when there's only two of you at the same time. So it's a lot. You're exhausted, and then I had to pretty much retell myself and reset myself, saying like, Vince, you're just never going to get sleep again. And if you do, great, but you don't deserve sleep anymore. This is your punishment for existing and wanting to be a parent, I guess. I don't know. But I heard one remark of somebody was like, yeah, well, if you have one baby that's up all night, that's the same thing, right? Because they're up all night. It's like, listen, before I choke you, when that baby does finally get to sleep and you get that sigh of relief and you're like, oh, thank you, and you start to relax, two more wake up, two more babies waking up fresh, ready to go, ready to scream, and you're just like, you feel like you're cutting that Hydra from the Greek mythology, that snake, you cut the head off and then two more appear and it just keeps going. It's like that, but it's with human children and you can't use a sword. So you have to figure out other options, such as the white noise machines, calming them down, holding them. And that's the thing, is like our kids loved to fall asleep while we were holding them, which is like, oh, that's cute. And it's like, oh, I need my arms though. And I got to go back to bed. And I'm not going to put the baby in the bed with me, because I'm going to fall asleep and somehow that baby is going to end up rolling over and like suffocating or something. So that's going to be my paranoia forever. So now you got to figure out, okay, how do I transfer them over back into the crib, And then you got to slowly put them in, and you want them to be fully asleep. And otherwise they wake up. That always happened to me. I'd hold them, they're just out. They're out like a light. And you're like, okay. And it's just like that movie, the Indiana Jones, where he's got to switch the gold with the bag. It's like that, but instead of getting the gold, you're going to get an extra 15 minutes of sleep. So you just start kind of slowly putting the baby in. And then you immediately, as you put them down, they roll over and their eyes are just wide open. And they're like, what? I've been up this whole time. Surprise. And they just start screaming at you. And you got to quickly pick them and grab them up, because otherwise the other two are going to wake up. It's a lot of fun. And I recommend it to my worst enemies. So, anywho, it's been a process. It's been a long journey. But now we are at the point where we have finally embraced the cry it out method. Now, we were a little concerned about the cry out method because, like I said, they're all in the same room. But basically, we just said, forget it. We're just going to take the portable bassinets, put them in different rooms. We'll have my son Vincent, who is way too big for the portable bassinets. He'll go in his crib. And then the two girls who can still fit in the bassinets and aren't crazy about crawling and going over stuff, we're going to put them in two separate rooms, sound machines, let them screaming out, because it's just them in the room. So whoever is asleep can sleep. Whoever's not asleep can cry it out and calm down. And similar to the dog with the crate, realize, oh, this is actually a nice, comfortable place here. It's so nice that I'm going to fall asleep here. And the amazing part about it is, as difficult as it wasn't difficult because I was like, oh, they're crying. It was more difficult as in like, oh, are they just going to do this all night though? Because like they're not going to explode. And I feel like that's the problem, is people think that babies will just like explode. if they cry too long. They're just going to get tired from crying. And as long as you know as a parent that they're fed, they're changed, they're being taken care of, they're in a safe area, they're not going to hurt themselves, then you're golden. Then you're golden. So you got to keep that in mind. But at the same time, that cry and that screaming, it starts to mess with your brain. So that's kind of a problem too. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel, because now that they do that, not only are they now at the point where I just put them right in and then they just relax and calm and they just lay there and they go to sleep on their own, they're even sleeping a lot longer, which is amazing. So since they're sleeping longer, and actually I'm not even sure, because maybe they do get up in the middle of the night, but since they're in their cribs, they're like, oh yeah, I know this protocol. I'm just going to go back to sleep. They go back to sleep. Whereas before, they were so used to falling asleep with me holding them that the second they get up, they're like, wait a minute, Papa's not holding me? Oh my gosh, I better scream and alert everybody. And then either my wife or I would go right in there and take care of the situation. And so that's been awesome. I'm not exactly sure when to start this cry-out method. I recommend just as soon as possible, in my opinion, but it is a challenge. It is a challenge to do that, and it's because you're constantly thinking like, okay, well, I got to at least make sure that the one who's asleep is asleep. I don't want them to be constantly waking up because this one's screaming. So just trying to play that game. But the bedtime routine was a battle. They're currently 10 months old. They're going to be turning, they're actually 10 and a half. So they're going to be turning 11 months in about 2 weeks. And it's only been now where it's not a constant battle to get them to go to sleep. And now, too, well, they've been this for about a little over a month, probably even a little longer than that, where they're actually sleeping through the night. We're not doing any feedings. They're not waking up. They go to bed and they sleep for about 11 to 12 hours, which is life-changing. I finally feel like I can get my 7-8 hours back. I finally feel like I have just a little bit of free time when they sleep. So that's why we're doing this podcast now, because we have this time to do this and talk and reflect, which is awesome. But this was not an easy battle. This was a lot, just trying to get them to sleep. And it was interesting because I was telling Lauren how when they were first home for first couple of months, they were constantly sleeping during the day. They'd sleep during the day, they'd sleep at night. And I'm like, but yet we were just so exhausted and we just had no sleep. And it's like, you think the babies that are sleeping all the time, you'd be able to sleep all the time, right? Sleep when the babies sleep. Well, they're getting up all the time. They get up, they scream, they cry, you feed them, do whatever, they go back to bed. They get up an hour or 2 hours later, and they just do that forever. Or at least it felt like forever until recently. So it was constantly that constant battle of like, you get up, and by the time you get them to go to bed, the next one is already up. And you're like, I have to get up again. I don't think I can do this anymore. But you keep doing it. You keep pushing. You do this. You do the noise machines. You do whatever you can. And I think that's about it. Let me think here. Let me think real quick because I got done pretty early. So, but yeah, you keep pushing forward. You keep working on it. It's not the same as a dog that gets up. It's not the same if one baby is a pain to go to sleep, because when that baby will eventually go to sleep, you got 2 more that decide, hey, your shift is over. Let's start our shift now. And it's crazy because every time there's always one baby that's crying. There's always at least one, especially at night. There's always at least one. But now looking back, I see all that stuff, and it's amazing to see where we've gone and how we are now, to how now it feels like it's a little bit more livable, and how now I can get a pretty decent amount of sleep and also still get some free time to record this podcast, which is awesome. So parents who are just going through this right now, whether you have one baby or 20 babies, just know that it will get better. They do improve. There comes a point, as I said before about other things, where they're struggling, and then they just click. Just something clicks, and you don't know what it is, and you just roll with the punches, and you're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. But I guess the only tips that I would kind of give to help the baby sleep that kind of worked for us is, like I said, that cry out method, kind of similar to what I've talked about before. They get more comfortable and able to sleep by themselves, as well as making sure maybe they're hungry, right? So if you got to feed them more during the day. I mean, Vincent now, he eats 3 solid meals a day plus 4 bottles at 8 ounces, so it's the max that our bottle thing can do, and he gets porridge before he goes to bed. And so it kind of tides him over to that 12 hours, and that seemed to work wonders with him. The girls, they pretty much do the same thing, except they don't do the porridge, and they have a little bit less food in their bottles. But that's part of it too. Just maybe they're getting up because they are hungry, and they think, oh, it's time to go. And then I've heard that they said that boys tend to get up earlier than girls when they're little, but I don't know how factual that is or not. It just, because it's hard to determine. It's just I know that my son is particularly very hyper all the time. So when he gets up, he's like, time to play? And I'm like, it's 4 a.m. Not even close. But now he's actually doing great, and that's awesome. The girls are doing great. They're all going to bed when they're supposed to. They're staying asleep. And I'm just glad that I'm on this part of having kids right now. So that's how I'm going to end it. Hopefully I said some different things compared to Lauren, and I'm excited to hear what she has to say. We did it.
I'm tired already.
You're tired already.
I'm always tired.
My segment was that boring? It
No.
was that exhausting? I thought I did a different angle.
I liked it. I liked you talking about Benson.
Yeah.
That was a lot of people. Funny enough, I actually had an old coworker tell me that raising a dog is harder. I'm going to let that sink in. Raising a dog is harder than raising a child. And I don't understand. To this day, I'm just like, that dog must have been horrible.
That must have been the worst dog.
Raising a dog is harder than raising a... What the heck is wrong with you? Yeah.
Some people just don't know.
There's not even comparison. It is night and day. It is in different universe.
You put the dog in a cage, you put the baby in a cage crib.
No, it's
and
totally
then
different.
When they get up, you can't put them down in the vet. That got a little dark.
Gosh.
We might need to cut
no,
that.
Yeah, I would definitely.
Yeah, let's cut that one.
No, but there's just no comparison. I mean, how could you ever compare getting sleep and not
like, what do you do?
Worrying all the time and not worrying? No.
What are you, new? They
but
must
no,
be new.
in all seriousness, there's no actual comparison. Yeah, it kind of gives you responsibility.
Which I thought, oh, once I have a dog and I'm learning these lessons, it'll apply.
Right.
Not really.
No.
Not really.
But it is an interesting thing, though, where you were saying how Benson, we were crate training him. So that was this routine that we were establishing with him that carried over into, turning into this great thing for our triplets. And I didn't really touch on routine, but that is a key element to sleep. I know a lot of people have different bedtime routines. It's kind of different when you have triplets. I've talked to different triplet moms on Instagram. Do you bathe your kids every night? Do you do all these certain things? And I feel like with one baby, it's definitely a lot easier to do these specific bath, every night kind of routines. And with triplets, it's just different. I remember I was talking with one triplet mom, and one of us saw a story of like triplets taking a bath, and she's like, oh my gosh, like, it's like, no, dude, they don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
They sit in the same, like, they're inside, and they don't wear shoes, and like, no, I'm not bathing 3 kids every night. Are you insane?
As my mother used to say, and still says, they ain't working in the coal mines.
I mean, it's true.
They're not working in the coal mines.
And I think if you do establish a routine that is somewhat, so relaxing is kind of a word I'm going to use loosely with triplets, because there's always like somebody yelling or like
There's always one crying.
screaming or yeah. So like establishing like a quiet, serene. I remember reading this like one person say that it needs to be like quiet for 2 hours before they go to bed. I'm like, who? Like, okay, yeah, if you have one and you can just like, come on, it's unrealistic. But
yeah,
I'm getting off.
I remember one time they were having such a struggle to sleep that I was in the middle of the night. I was like, I'm just going to look up how to make kids sleep for 12 hours.
I do it all the time.
Yeah, and I found a YouTube video, and she only had one baby. And it worked great for her baby, but she's like, yeah, then I take him, he gets a bath, then he gets a spa treatment, then we go to the relaxing thing, and then we study calculus, and then we pass the class, and then we also dance a lot of dancing. Got to get that energy out. We got to win best dancing class in America's Got Talent, and then we take him to the gym, and then we juggle, and we do this every night, and then eventually he'll sleep for 12 hours. I'm like, that's great. I can't do that with three children.
So that's 99% of the internet is people with that. Like, he's not I mean, he is exaggerating, but 99% of the internet has these weird quirks for routines for basically, you know, unlock the ultimate bedtime. Your baby will sleep 28 hours a day, and it's how does it work? Like, it's so every baby is different. I'm going to say that right now. I know I'm not a scientist, but every baby is different. So if you find a routine that works for you, awesome, and stick with it. Like, anything that we do now with the cry it out method, or you know, feeding them a little before bed, or maybe we're reading books and we're relaxing a little bit together. Like, that is our routine. You know, it's not going to be everybody's routine. But yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, we even tailor it a little bit differently. So, as you said, every baby's different, which is a blessing, but also a curse.
Yeah.
Because they seem to be different in things that you want them all to be the same at. You want them all to sleep at the same time. You want them all to fall asleep and stay asleep. As we talked for both of ours, Vincent's very hyper, and he likes to get up, and he likes to be super hungry, so we started giving him more food. Whereas the girls, sometimes they're eating a lot. Other times they're more picky, and they don't want to eat as much. And we just had to kind of figure out, okay, you know, how do we, I mean, there's times where we'll put Vincent to bed a little bit earlier, give him a little more time, because he just it took him a longer time to like get into a sleep cycle compared to Charlotte. You'd hold her for like 10 seconds and you're like, all right, in you go. And then all of a sudden she's like completely calm and fine and goes right to bed. So each kid's different.
It's constant change, always. And I think what's interesting is we're having to handle 3 different children at once. So we're having to tailor our life to their individual schedules, but also try to create one routine to that. So it sounds totally insane, but somehow we.
You're saying that we have a life? We had a life outside of this?
Maybe.
Maybe. I don't think we tailor our life. I think we just gave up the life and specifically. It's
our new life.
Geared. This is the new life with the kids, but it's great. I do love it. I'm just trying to be funny, but
oh no, we're totally being funny. Yeah, don't take this as like a serious. We're very lucky to have the kids that we have. You know, all comments aside that we've made about them getting up early or not sleeping, it's like these kids go to bed at 6:30. Okay, 6:30. What? I mean, there's still a lot of the day left. I'm gonna be like, it's gonna be a couple months later. They're gonna go to bed at 8, and I'm gonna be like, remember when they went to bed at 6:30?
Oh, magical.
But you know what? Yeah, it is kind of hard.
Then what time do they get up? They get up between 5:30 and 6.
Yeah.
So they get their 12 hours in. So
it is early. You can't be mad at them. Like, you know, we're not going to bed at 6:30. I got to take advantage. Anytime they're asleep, like I said, I got to run around and do a bunch of stuff. But no, you can't be mad at them. Yeah, you're kind of grumpy because it's early, but 6:30, can't be mad at them.
You go to bed at 9 or 10. What are you doing past then? You're doing crimes. Don't do crimes.
No crimes.
No crimes. One thing I want to say, just to kind of add to what you were talking about in yours, where you were talking about the kids, you know, they would prefer if the kids were in the same room with you for a year, and you were saying how it was hard, difficult.
Yeah.
And you said it would take you like a minute to get to the other thing. It's actually less than that, because we have a Jack and Jill situation. So it's our room. Then there's a bathroom attached, and then attached to that bathroom is the nursery.
It is less, yeah. That was
so we could easily, the second one decides to get up, we bolt, we go through the bathroom, pick the kid, bring him into the bathroom, calm him down with the white noise machine, the fan going off in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And then we can bring them back into the thing. So we had a lot of access to that. Not to mention we have the baby monitors that detect the sounds. We keep the babies in a crib with just them. Back is best. They're on their back. Now they're rolling around a little bit more, but there's not a ton of blankets or pillows or anything where they could harm themselves.
Right.
So not saying that you could keep your kid in your room for a year. It's just, just depending on what your house situation is and what kind of works best for you. But with this, we were able to kind of have a little bit of privacy, let them sleep in their own room. We could watch TV now, which is nice. We could just kind of relax and unwind, make podcasts, whatever. And there's still a good, they're not super far away. They're on the other side of the house or somewhere where they're unattainable or unreachable. I mean, even if we didn't have the monitors, what I say to you all the time, you can hear them cry. They're right there. They're right there. Like,
it
you're
is a
able to hear
benefit
them.
to be able to see what's going on. Are they crying? Are they like stuck somewhere weird in the crib or whatever? And we didn't talk about our monitors in our last episode where we talked about some of our favorite stuff. But I think next time I definitely want to, because I really love ours. I feel like it's a triplet or multiples must-have, just because the way that it can handle multiple cameras, I think is really nice.
Yeah, and it's on its own circuit, so you don't have to use an app. A lot of people get paranoid. Yeah, a lot of people get paranoid that people can hack into that app and do weird stuff. It's not like that. It's got its own system. Very easy to connect, very easy to use.
We'll talk about that later.
So yeah, we'll talk about that maybe for must-haves part 2.
Yeah.
But
sleep, it's hard because we touched on it a long time ago. You don't get sleep. You think you do, but you don't. But I will say, now that they are older, they are able to put themselves to sleep. I actually do feel like I'm getting a little bit of sleep. I don't feel like I'm getting what I used to, not nearly, because I feel like I won't ever. I mean, there's so much to do and so much to worry about and think about. I mean, you can't sleep in. You can't be lazy. Like back when you didn't have kids and you're like, I don't feel like doing anything today. I'm just gonna. It's not even an option. I don't even think about that anymore. And people that stay up to 1 a.m. I'm like, what the heck is wrong with you? You got to get up in a couple hours. Are you insane? Are you nuts?
The thing is, the thing that's very key is scheduling. Scheduling. So when you got to put them to bed at the same time, I think that's what I would recommend for sure.
Yeah, get them on we talked.
Get
them
on that routine. Yes.
Yeah.
But they're also going to get up at the same time. So if you have a sleep in day,
you won't.
You don't have a child.
I just saw something on Instagram that said, I put my daughter stayed up 5 hours past her bedtime, so she slept in 5 minutes longer than normal. So it's it doesn't. Everyone's experiencing these problems. It's definitely not a triplet thing.
Yeah. So we don't have sleep in days, which I thought was interesting because when I talk to my friends, whatever, it's a weekend, it's a Friday night. I'm like, oh, it's almost 10. I got to go to bed. My kid's going to get up between 5 and 6. And they're like, oh, it's they don't just go, oh, it's the weekend, no work, time to sleep in. No, they get up at the same time. They're used to that schedule. And you just, as long as you're following that schedule, you're going to bed at the time that makes sense for you so you can get your 7-8 hours or how many ever hours you need, then it's fine. But yeah, it's definitely a different experience. And I'm just glad that I'm in this part of my life now compared to before where I was happy if I could get maybe 3 hours consecutive of sleep because you were constantly getting up. The second one would wake up screaming, the next one would get up screaming. And I'm also glad that we're not doing the whole, rock the baby to sleep thing. It sounds like I'm being a horrible person, but the issue is that once you're done rocking them, the next one wakes up. And you're just in this vicious cycle because they're not learning to sleep on their own. And
we were in that cycle for a while. It felt like we were
long, in my opinion.
Yeah, it felt like we were rocking them and trying to comfort them to sleep for way too long. And I'm like, there's got to be something, And that's when I started thinking I think cry it out. And I wish we would have done it earlier, and I know we should have. So I would
right
highly,
after the NICU, just
Jesus,
let them figure it out.
Probably about 5 or 6 months when they're. That's probably what I would have did. It is hard with their corrected age, but I will say I'm glad that we waited until now. They did teeth for a while, so it did get a little confusing with, are they crying because they're really hurting with their teeth, or are they crying because, they want attention and they don't, want to go to bed. So I feel like right now where they are, they're in a situation where we kind of have the teething under control. They are still teething, but it's not as constantly, the constant crying due to teething. So it kind of felt like the right time for us to do the cry it out method, but I know it is pretty standard around 5 or 6 months.
Yeah, and I think we should have an episode just about teething, because that's something that nobody ever talks about, or they talk about it lightly, and that's the bane of our existence, or at least it was. Teething is so hard because you don't know necessarily if it's teething or not. You just know that they're upset. And yeah, like you said, that was a big issue too when they'd sleep, is just like you can't really let them cry it out if they're just straight up in pain. So you're constantly figuring out, okay, what do we do to help soothe? Do we soothe the teething? Is it that type of issue? Or like you said, is the baby just not being used to
it's trying
going
to learn.
to sleep? Just trying to learn. So it's definitely a juggle. It's definitely a gamble.
But to sum it up, I think it's something that both you and your baby needs to learn together. It's a lot of growing pains between the two of you, and whatever you can find that works, stick with it. If something's not working, scour the internet and find different options. I think there's a lot of different things you can try. Relaxing bath, I know definitely works. Just reading books, things like that could really work. We started, like we had mentioned, we started feeding our son a little more before bed, just to kind of make sure he wasn't getting a little hungry when he woke up. I mean, there's tons of things you can do, but I think it's definitely more of a personal experience that you have to figure out. And I feel like it's never going to change, but I feel like we're in a really good spot right now.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about it.
It'll definitely change, because as we've noticed, their sleep schedules are constantly changing. It's constantly adapting. But like I said, you go through these battles and you're just like, come on, let's go. And then next thing you know, something clicks and you're like, oh my gosh, they slept a little longer. Oh my gosh, they didn't get up as much to eat. Oh my gosh, they're not screaming because they're teething. Great. And then it just starts to grow. And
now that we've done the whole just they go to sleep on their own, I do kind of miss like snuggling with them when we'd rock them to sleep a little bit. I do.
Vincent was the king of the snugglers.
Yeah, because he's just this big.
Yeah, you always took him though, so I would have either Sophia or Charlotte, and they're good too. They're good too.
Oh,
but
they don't
get that big bear hug squeeze though. Yeah. That's a Vincent thing. But
we get them during the day. We get a bunch of
You get all the snuggles you want during the day.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we should end it, with a nice talk of snuggles.
Snuggles.
There you go.
All right, we're gonna go get some sleep.
Yep. Thanks for listening, everybody.
All right. Bye.